Picture this moment with me. A woman sits alone at her kitchen table, tears streaming down her face as she stares at her wedding ring. For 15 years, she's tried everything to make her marriage work. 15 years of walking on eggshells, of making herself smaller, of apologizing for things she never did wrong. 15 years of hoping tomorrow would be different. And then, one quiet Sunday morning, she realizes something profound. The deafening silence of being alone couldn't possibly be louder than the soul-crushing noise of living with someone who dims your light. That woman was Sarah, a dear friend of mine, and her story mirrors countless others I've encountered throughout my years of speaking with people from all walks of life. Today, I want to talk about something that society often whispers about but rarely addresses head-on. The raw, unvarnished truth that living alone is far better than living with someone toxic. We've been fed this narrative since childhood, that being alone equals being lonely, that having any relationship is better than having no relationship at all. We've internalized these messages so deeply that they've become the invisible prison. But today, right here, right now, we're going to shatter those bars together. Let me share something powerful with you. In nature, certain plants can't grow in the same soil because one will literally poison the other's roots. They call it allelopathy. Isn't it fascinating that nature inherently understands what we humans sometimes struggle to accept? That sometimes separation isn't just healthy, it's essential for survival. When you're alone, you have one voice to listen to, your own. But when you're with someone toxic, you have two voices in your head, yours and theirs. And gradually, insidiously, their voice becomes louder than yours until you can barely remember what your own voice sounds like. I remember meeting a gentleman named Robert in 2012. He was a brilliant architect, creative and vibrant, but after 10 years of living with a partner who constantly criticized his dreams, who rolled her eyes at his ideas, who told him he was being ridiculous. Whenever he spoke about his passion, something had changed. When I met him, he spoke in whispers, his shoulders hunched as if perpetually bracing for impact. His story isn't unique. It's a pattern I've seen repeated countless times. 3 years after choosing to live alone, I met Robert again. The transformation was remarkable. His voice had found its strength again. His eyes had regained their spark. He wasn't just existing, he was living. For the first time in years, he told me, I can hear myself. Toxic relationships are like living in a house with carbon monoxide poisoning. The danger isn't in sudden, dramatic moments. It's in the slow, gradual way it depletes you of oxygen, of life, of your essential self. And just like with carbon monoxide, sometimes you don't even realize how much damage is being done until you finally step out into fresh air. Let's talk about what toxicity really looks like, because it's not always as obvious as physical abuse or outright cruelty. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it wears the mask of love. Sometimes it comes disguised as I'm just trying to help you or I only want what's best for you. It's the partner who makes cutting remarks and then says, I'm just joking. It's the spouse who gives you the silent treatment for days because you didn't read their mind. It's a significant other who makes you feel guilty for spending time with family or friends. It's the person who makes you question your own reality, your own memories, your own worth. These are the invisible wounds that toxic relationships inflict. And here's the truth that might be hard to swallow. No amount of loneliness in solitude can compare to the loneliness of being with someone who makes you feel alone. The quality of your life is directly proportional to the quality of relationship you have with yourself. And toxic relationships, they make it impossible to maintain that relationship with yourself. They're like static on the radio frequency of your soul, constantly interfering with your ability to tune into your own wisdom, your own truth, your own worth. In 2010, I met a woman named Maria. She had been married for 23 years to someone who controlled every aspect of her life, her finances, her friendships, her future. But at least I'm not alone, she would say, as if being alone was the worst possible fate that could befall a person. It took her another 3 years to realize that she had been alone all along, alone in her dreams, alone in her struggles, alone in a marriage that existed only on paper. When Maria finally chose to leave, something remarkable happened. She discovered that being alone wasn't the catastrophes she had feared. Instead, it was like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. It was like finding a room of her own in a house she had lived in for decades but never fully inhabited. The reality of being alone is never as frightening as the fear of being alone. When you're alone, you get to decide what time to wake up without being criticized for sleeping too late or getting up too early. You get to choose what to watch on TV without being mocked for your choices. You get to decorate your space without compromising your taste. You get to exist without explanation, without justification, without apology. But more importantly, when you're alone, you get to rediscover who you are without the distorting mirror of someone else's judgment. You get to hear your own thoughts without them being interrupted or dismissed. You get to feel your own feelings without being told they're wrong or inappropriate or too much. Let me share something powerful that I witnessed in 2014. A man in his 60s had lived for 40 years with someone who belittled every achievement, who criticized every decision, who turned every joy into an opportunity for ridicule. I thought I was being strong by staying, he said. I thought I was doing the right thing by not giving up. But here's the truth, he finally realized. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes the right thing to do is to give up. Give up the illusion, give up the hope that someone toxic will change. Give up the false belief that loneliness is worse than abuse. That heartbeat is yours and yours alone. No one else has the right to make it race with anxiety or heavy with dread. The choice between living alone and living with someone toxic isn't really a choice between solitude and companionship. It's a choice between peace and chaos. It's a choice between growth and stagnation. It's a choice between living your life and merely existing in someone else's shadow. Remember those early morning moments when you wake up and for a split second, you forget where you are? In that brief moment of pure consciousness, before the weight of your situation crashes back in, you feel light, free, unburdened. That feeling, that's your soul trying to tell you something. That's your inner wisdom whispering what true peace feels like. I want to share the story of David, a successful business owner I met in 2013. On paper, he had everything: a beautiful home, a thriving company, a 20-year marriage. But inside his home, he lived in an emotional war zone. His partner would rage over the smallest things: a misplaced coffee cup, a phone call that went to voicemail, dinner being 5 minutes late. But we have such a beautiful life together, he would say, gesturing at their perfectly decorated home. It took him years to realize that a golden cage is still a cage. The transformation began the day he found himself hiding in his own garage, pretending to organize tools just to have a moment of peace. That's when it hit him. He had become a stranger in his own home, a fugitive in his own life. The breaking point wasn't a dramatic fight or a shocking revelation. It was the simple, profound realization that he couldn't remember the last time he had laughed freely without worrying about the consequences. The cost of staying in a toxic relationship isn't just the pain you feel today. It's the life you could be living slipping away day by day. It's the dreams you stop dreaming, the jokes you stop telling, the friends you stop seeing, the passions you stop pursuing. It's the slow death of your authentic self. Think about a garden. When you plant flowers, you don't just throw seeds on the ground and walk away. You prepare the soil, you ensure proper drainage, you check the pH levels, you make sure the environment is conducive to growth. Your life, your soul, your spirit, they're no different. They need the right environment to flourish. In 2011, I worked with a group of people who had all chosen to leave toxic relationships. One woman, Patricia, shared something profound. She said, when I was married, I used to dream about having cancer, not because I wanted to die, but because I thought it would be the only acceptable way to escape. How twisted is that? Wishing for a deadly disease because it felt easier than saying, I choose me. The path to choosing yourself isn't always straight. It's not always clear. But here's what I know for certain. Every single person I've ever met who chose to leave a toxic relationship and embrace solitude has said the same thing. I wish I had done it sooner. Let's talk about what happens when you finally choose yourself. The first few weeks or months might be challenging. Your mind, conditioned to constant chaos, might mistake peace for emptiness. Your heart, used to perpetual anxiety might interpret calm as something missing. This is normal. This is part of the healing. When you break a bone and it heals wrong, sometimes doctors need to break it again to set it properly. The second break hurts, yes, but it's a healing pain. It's the pain of things finally being set right. Leaving a toxic relationship is similar. The pain you feel isn't the pain of something breaking. It's the pain of something finally healing correctly. I remember Julie, a teacher who left her toxic marriage in 2009. The first month living alone, she couldn't sleep because the house was too quiet. No more walking on eggshells, no more midnight arguments, no more tension thick enough to cut with a knife, with just silence. But then something magical happened. She started filling that silence with her own voice. She started singing in the shower again. She started talking to herself while cooking. She started laughing at her own jokes. She rediscovered her voice in that silence. Living alone after leaving a toxic relationship isn't about being lonely. It's about being free, free to breathe, free to move, free to think, free to feel, free to heal, free to discover all the parts of yourself that you had to hide away to survive. The healing process isn't just about getting over someone. It's about getting back to yourself. It's about remembering who you were before someone else's toxicity became the lens through which you viewed yourself. It's about reclaiming your right to exist exactly as you are. In 2014, I witnessed a remarkable transformation in a man named Michael. He had spent 12 years with someone who controlled his every move through guilt and manipulation. I feel like I'm starting from scratch, he told me 3 months after leaving. But you know what? Starting from scratch is better than living with someone who keeps erasing who you are. This journey of choosing solitude over toxic companionship isn't just about being alone. It's about becoming whole. It's about understanding that you are not half a person waiting to be completed by someone else. You're already complete. A toxic relationship doesn't add to your life. It subtracts. When you finally step away from toxicity, you begin to notice things you couldn't see before. Colors seem brighter, food tastes better, music feels deeper. Why? Because you're no longer experiencing life through the filter of someone else's negativity. You're no longer bracing for the next criticism, the next explosion, the next silent treatment. Think about how you feel when you're around toxic people. That tension in your shoulders, that knot in your stomach, that constant low-grade anxiety humming in your veins. Now imagine living without that. Imagine waking up and not immediately wondering what kind of mood they'll be in. Imagine making decisions without running through a mental checklist of potential reactions. Imagine breathing freely in your own space. The beauty of choosing to live alone isn't in the absence of another person. It's in the presence of yourself. It's in rediscovering your own rhythms, your own preferences, your own joy. It's in learning that you can be your own best company, your own source of comfort, your own source of validation. I've seen people transform their lives completely once they understood this truth. They've gone back to school, started businesses, rekindled old friendships, discovered new passions, all because they finally had the space to hear their own desires, to follow their own dreams, to trust their own instincts. The opposite of toxicity isn't just health, it's growth. When you remove yourself from a toxic environment, you're not just stopping the damage, you're creating space for something new to flourish. You're not just ending a chapter, you're starting a whole new book. And this time, you're the author. Now let's talk about the practical reality of rebuilding your life. The first thing you need to understand is that healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel invincible, ready to conquer the world. Other days, the weight of solitude might feel heavy. Both are perfectly normal. Both are part of the journey. I remember Anna, a brilliant lawyer who left her toxic relationship in 2008. She told me something profound. The hardest part wasn't leaving. The hardest part was learning to trust my own judgment again. After years of having someone question every decision, doubt every instinct, and criticize every choice, she had to relearn how to trust herself. We started small. She would make one decision each day without seeking anyone's approval: what to eat for breakfast, what to wear to work, which route to take home. Simple choices that helped her rebuild her decision-making muscles. By the end of the year, she had not only rebuilt her confidence, but had made partner at her firm. Something her ex had always told her was impossible. The process of rebuilding isn't just about healing from past wounds. It's about creating a new foundation. Think about building a house. If you discover the foundation is cracked, you don't just patch it up and hope for the best. You tear it down and build something stronger. Your life deserves the same careful reconstruction. In 2012, I met Thomas, a chef who had spent 8 years with someone who mocked his passion for cooking. She would taste my food and say it was mediocre, that I'd never make it in the restaurant business. He shared 2 years after leaving. He opened his own restaurant. The first dish on his menu, he named it Freedom, a recipe he created the night he moved into his own place. Living alone isn't about the absence of others. It's about the presence of yourself. It's about creating a space where your dreams can breathe, where your talents can flourish, where your soul can dance without fear of judgment or ridicule. Think about the simple pleasure of coming home to a quiet space. No emotional landmines to navigate, no walking on eggshells, no bracing for impact, just peace. Just possibility, just you, reconnecting with your own rhythms, your own desires, your own... Let me share something powerful that happened in 2013. A woman named Rachel had been living alone for 6 months after ending a 15-year toxic marriage. One morning, she woke up and realized she had slept through the night for the first time in years. No anxiety dreams, no midnight panic, just peaceful, restorative sleep. That's when I knew, she told me, that my body had finally realized it was safe. Your body keeps score. It remembers every criticism, every manipulation, every moment of feeling small. But it also remembers how to heal. It remembers how to thrive. It remembers how to be whole. When arrows are crafted, they're heated, bent, and shaped under intense pressure. But once they're released from that pressure, they fly straight and true. You are no different. The pressure you've endured hasn't broken you. It's forged you. And now it's time to fly. The journey of rebuilding after toxicity is also about rediscovering joy in simple things. The freedom to leave dishes in the sink without facing criticism. The pleasure of watching whatever you want on TV. The luxury of taking a long bath without someone banging on the door, demanding attention. These aren't small freedoms. They're the building blocks of a peaceful life. I worked with a man named Marcus in 2011 who shared something beautiful. After leaving his toxic relationship, he started keeping a joy journal. Every day, he would write down one moment of pure, unfiltered happiness. At first, he struggled to find anything to write. But slowly, the pages filled up, the sound of rain on my window, dancing in my kitchen while making coffee, reading a book until 3 a.m. because no one was there to complain about the light. This is what healing looks like. Not grand gestures or dramatic transformations, but small moments of reclaiming your right to exist exactly as you are. Every time you honor your own preferences, you heal a little more. Every time you trust your own judgment, you grow a little stronger. Let's talk about the art of creating your own rituals. When you live alone after leaving toxicity, you have the opportunity to design your life exactly as you want it. Morning coffee on the balcony. Sunday afternoon reading sessions, midnight snacks without judgment. These aren't just habits. They're declarations of independence. In 2014, I met Sarah, who had transformed her home into what she called her sanctuary of solitude. Every corner reflected her personality, her tastes, her dreams. For the first time in my life, she said, I don't have to justify my choices to anyone. If I want pink walls and mismatched furniture, that's what I'll have. If I want to eat breakfast for dinner, I will. If I want to dance in my living room at midnight, this is the power of choosing yourself. The power to create a life that reflects your authentic self, not someone else's expectations or demands. It's about understanding that alone doesn't mean lonely, that solitude can be rich with possibility, that peace is worth more than any toxic connection. Every in nature has its own space. Trees don't grow on top of each other. Flowers don't fight for the same patch of soil. Animals establish their territories. Your need for your own space isn't selfish, it's natural. It's necessary. It's healthy. Consider the bamboo tree. For years, it grows underground, invisible to the eye. People might look at the soil and think nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, it's developing a complex root system. Then when it's ready, it shoots up, growing faster than any other plant. Your journey might feel like this: invisible growth happening beneath the surface, preparing you for moments of incredible transformation. The art of living alone after toxicity isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. It's about turning your home into a sanctuary, your solitude into strength, your independence into power. It's about understanding that you don't need to justify your existence or apologize for your presence. You have the right to take up space in this world, to speak your truth, to live your life on your own terms. One of the most powerful skills you'll develop on this journey is the ability to maintain healthy boundaries. After leaving a toxic relationship, you might feel guilty about setting limits, about saying no, about choosing yourself. This guilt isn't yours to carry. It was placed there by someone who benefited from your lack of boundaries. In 2007, I met Catherine, a talented artist who had spent decades dimming her light to make others comfortable. Her story struck me deeply. After leaving her toxic marriage, she struggled with the concept of boundary. Every time I say no to someone, she said, I feel like I need to apologize for a week. But then she started thinking about boundaries differently. She imagined them not as walls, but as the frame around a masterpiece. They don't restrict the art. They give it focus. They give it power. Think about the ocean. It meets the shore with gentle waves and fierce tides, but it never apologizes for its nature. It never makes itself smaller to accommodate the beach. It maintains its boundaries naturally, consistently, unapologetic. This is the kind of boundary setting we're aiming for. Natural, consistent, unapologetic. Let me share a profound truth. Your capacity to be alone is directly proportional to your capacity for authentic relationships. When you learn to be comfortable in your solitude, you stop accepting relationships out of fear. You start choosing them from a place of wholeness, not desperation. I remember James, a musician I met in 2013. He had spent years in a relationship where his partner would threaten to leave every time they disagreed about something. After choosing to live alone, he made a powerful discovery. I realized that being alone isn't the worst thing that could happen to me, he said. The worst thing would be staying in a relationship that requires me to betray myself. This brings us to an important point about maintaining boundaries after leaving toxicity. People might tell you you're being too picky, too selective, too careful. They might say you're building walls instead of bridges. But there's what they don't understand. You're not building walls. You're creating a sanctuary. You're protecting your peace. You're honoring your worth. Consider the way a lighthouse operates. It doesn't chase boats. It doesn't dim its light to make the darkness more comfortable. It simply stands firm, shines bright, and lets boats choose whether to navigate toward or away from it. This is how healthy boundaries work. You don't chase. You don't dim. You simply stand firm in your truth and let others choose how they want to respond. In 2010, I worked with Lisa, who shared something remarkable about her journey to solitude. She said, I used to think being alone meant being available to everyone all the time because I had no other commitments. Now I understand that being alone means I'm finally committed to myself. She learned to treat her time, her energy, and her peace as sacred resources, not unlimited commodities to be drained by others. They're not just about keeping negative things out. They're about making space for positive things to flourish. When you maintain healthy boundaries, you're not just protecting yourself from harm. You're creating conditions for growth, for joy, for peace. Think about how a garden grows. It needs fences to keep out creatures that would destroy the plants. It needs borders to prevent stronger plants from overwhelming delicate ones. It needs structure to support climbing vines. Your life needs these same elements. Your boundaries aren't restrictions. They're the structure that allows your authentic self to flourish. Let me share something profound that happened with Michael, a teacher I met in 2014. After leaving his toxic relationship, he started what he called his permission project. Every day, he would give himself permission to do one thing his ex-partner had criticized or forbidden. Permission to laugh. loudly, permission to leave dishes in the sink overnight, permission to spend an entire Sunday reading, permission to exist without explanation or apology. This is what healthy boundaries look like in practice. They're not just about saying no to others, they're about saying yes to yourself, yes to your needs, yes to your preferences, yes to your joy, yes to your peace. Consider how different species of plants require different amounts of water, sunlight, and care. What nurtures one might drown another. What helps one grow might cause another to wither. Your needs are just as unique and just as valid. Your boundaries aren't universal. They're personal. They're tailored to your specific requirements for growth and peace. In 2012, I witnessed a beautiful transformation in Rebecca, who had left a decade-long toxic relationship. She created what she called her non-negotiables, a list of boundaries she wouldn't compromise on no matter what. The difference, she said, is that now I don't just set boundaries. I honor them. I treat them as promises to myself, not suggestions that can be broken when someone pushes hard enough. This brings us to another crucial aspect of maintaining boundaries: consistency. A fence with gaps isn't effective. A door that's sometimes locked and sometimes not doesn't provide security. Your boundaries need to be consistent to be effective. This doesn't mean they can't evolve. They should evolve as you grow and heal. But they shouldn't waver based on external pressure or manipulation. Think about the way trees grow. They don't apologize for taking up space. They don't shrink their branches to make room for others. They grow naturally, organically, in whatever direction they need to grow. Your boundaries should function the same way. Natural extensions of your need for space. Living alone after toxicity isn't just about physical solitude. It's about emotional sovereignty. It's about understanding that you have the right to decide who gets close to you, who gets to share your energy, who gets to be part of your journey. It's about recognizing that being selective about who you let into your life isn't being difficult. It's being wise. Every time you maintain a healthy boundary, you're not just protecting your present peace. You're investing in your future joy. Every time you honor your own limits, you're not just saying no to what drains you, you're saying yes to what fills you. Every time you choose yourself, you're not just avoiding toxicity, you're creating space for authenticity. As we draw near the end of our time together, I want to speak directly to your heart about what it truly means to choose yourself. The journey from toxic companionship to peaceful solitude isn't just about changing your address. It's about changing your relationship with yourself. In 2015, I met Emma, a woman who had spent 30 years believing that her worth was tied to her relationship status. I realized that staying in a toxic relationship because you're afraid of being alone is like staying in a burning house because you're afraid of the cold outside. The cold might be uncomfortable, but it won't destroy you. The fire will. Think about diamonds for a moment. They don't start out brilliant and clear. They form under intense pressure in complete darkness, but when they finally emerge and are properly cut, they shine with an inner light that nothing can dim. Your journey through toxicity to solitude is similar. The pressure hasn't destroyed you. It's crystallized your strength. Let me share the story of Marcus, a successful executive I met in 2013. For years, he lived with someone who would routinely tell him he was nothing without her. After choosing solitude, he discovered something remarkable. In the silence, he said, "I found my voice. In the emptiness, I found my fullness. In the solitude, I found myself." Today, he runs leadership workshops teaching others how to recognize their inner strength. There's a truth that society rarely acknowledges. Being alone is a skill. Like any skill, it can be developed, refined, mastered, and like any valuable skill, it opens up new possibilities in your life. When you master the art of being alone, you master the art of being whole. Consider the oak tree. It doesn't need other trees to survive. It grows tall and strong on its own, spreading its roots deep into the earth, reaching its branches toward the sky. Yes, it's part of a forest ecosystem, but it stands complete in itself. This is the kind of independence we're talking about. Isolation, but self-sufficiency. In 2011, I worked with Sarah, who made a powerful observation after leaving her toxic marriage. She said, I used to think peace was boring. I was so used to chaos that calmness felt empty. Now I understand that peace isn't the absence of something. It's the presence of everything that matters. Your decision to choose solitude over toxic companionship isn't just about being alone. It's about being aligned with your truth. It's about understanding that peace isn't a consolation prize for those who couldn't make relationships work. Peace is the grand prize for those brave enough to choose their own well-being over others' approval. Think about the night sky. Each star shines alone, millions of miles from its nearest neighbor, yet together they create constellations, galaxies, entire universes of light. Your solitude doesn't disconnect you from others. It allows you to shine your own light, to take your own place in the vast constellation of human experience. I remember Daniel, an artist I met in 2014. After leaving a decade-long toxic relationship, he created a series of self-portraits. The first one, painted the week he left, showed a figure in shadows. The last one, painted a year later, showed the same figure surrounded by light. I didn't add the light, he explained. I just stopped painting the shadows that someone else had convinced me were there. This is what choosing yourself looks like. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you've always been. It's about wiping away the layers of doubt, fear, and criticism that toxic relationships painted over your true self. Remember the story of the phoenix, a mythical bird that burns to ashes, only to rise again, more magnificent than before. This isn't just a story. This is your story. Every person who has chosen to leave toxicity behind has gone through this transformation. The burning might be painful, but the rising is glorious. In 2009, I met Clara, who shared something beautiful about her journey to solitude. The day I realized that I preferred my own company to the company of someone who diminished me, she said, was the day I truly began to live. Today, she runs support groups for others making the same journey, turning her solitude into solidarity. This is what I want you to understand deep in your bones. The peace you find in solitude isn't just the absence of conflict. It's the presence of self-love. It's not just the silence after the storm. It's the music of your own heart, beating freely, your own lungs breathing deeply, your own soul dancing to its own rhythm. Your journey from toxic companionship to peaceful solitude is a sacred one. It's a journey from noise to music, from chaos to order, from darkness to light. It's a journey from surviving to thriving, from existing to living, from pleasing others to honoring yourself. This journey never really ends. Every day you choose yourself is a day you grow stronger. Every moment you honor your peace is a moment you heal deeper. Every time you embrace your solitude is a time you become more authentically you. You weren't born needing someone else to complete you. You weren't created to be half of something. You are whole, complete, and worthy exactly as you are. The right people in your life will add to your peace, not disturb it. They will complement your completeness, not try to fill your spaces. As we close, I want you to hold this truth close to your heart. Choosing to live alone rather than with someone toxic isn't just a choice about living arrangements. It's a declaration of self-worth. It's not just about changing your address. It's about changing your destiny. It's not just about being alone. It's about being alive, truly alive. Let every breath you take in solitude be a breath of freedom. Let every moment of peace be a testament to your courage. Let every day you choose yourself be a day you celebrate your strength. Because in the end, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. And make it a loving one. Make it a peaceful one. Make it a worthy one.